Welcome, everybody. It is November 6th. Let me bring in Luiza and Bill here. And this is our post-election rundown call of what we saw in the election results. We're all tired. We're all irritated. But we're all happy because Donald Trump is going to be the president again. I'm so happy, and I'm such a peaceful mood. I wore my red MAGA hat instead of my dark MAGA hat. So today I'm feeling a less dark mood on the future of our country. So what we're going to do here is try to go through different key election results as they relate specifically to Clermont County on all of the big races. And we're going to try to do it in a crisp, clear way and give our insights on what some of the numbers might mean on these races. So before we get going, Luiza, how about introduce yourself? Any hot point you want to make to say hi?
Hi, I'm happy that Donald Trump has won. It's been an exhausting 16 months. So, yay!
It's been an exhausting, how many years? 10 years. All right, Bill.
I'm just celebrating Safe Space Wednesday. That's what I'm doing here in Milford. So
Bill had a ruckus post-election party at his house. I left about 10:20. I'm sure that everybody else was there till 2:30. I stayed up. Did you guys stay up till, how late did you stay up?
3:30.
Until 4.
Okay. I stayed up. I did not listen to Trump speak. So I think I probably, if I would have stayed up a little bit longer, I would have heard that. But I went to bed before that.
It was only 25 minutes long, but it was well worth listening to.
I watched it this morning. So, all right. So we're going to go through different races and from a Clermont County perspective, and just give any insights we have. What I did, just so everybody knows, is I made a set of charts with the races on them, the results, and for most of the races, the results from the prior time that seat was up, and we can look for little nuances and insights. It was a good night from the standpoint of all the Republicans won, Trump won. We'll see some things on the percentages here, but let's get rolling. And before we get into the individual races, I know that you guys, one of you at least, visited or stopped by the chaplain's house, thinking probably you were going to be impressed in a post-Halloween environment on his signs. And who drove by and who took the picture?
Oh, the most updated one is I stopped by there to take a look to see if, hopefully, pre-election day and then day of election, that maybe by some act of God that Greg felt the need to put signs in his yard. And sure enough, dead as a doornail, man, just nothing. No promotion whatsoever.
So here it is. This is the picture. And that's a clean yard. I mean, there's not a single political thing or a flag or anything there.
You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know he's on state central committee. You wouldn't know he's on state central committee. You wouldn't know he's the exec of Miami Township, and you wouldn't know that he's even on the Clermont County GOP. It's pretty sad.
Okay. All right. So that's the chaplain. Let's get into the races here. So this is the presidential, and for anybody, if you're listening, I going to give the numbers real quick here, the comparative numbers, and then open it up to Bill and Luiza on any insights they have relating to Clermont County. So for president, Trump got 67.09% of the vote in 2024. A lot of these, I did this comparison. He got 67.35% of the vote in 2020. And just for the hell of it, I went and looked because I was curious. He got 67.54 in 2016. So all kind of within a rounding error there. So these are the results in Clermont County. Insights, guys? Anything that you thought about Trump's performance in Clermont County?
Nope, just sends a solid message that Clermont is still Trump country, and it's not going to change anytime soon.
I did. Luiza, any comment on Trump in Clermont County?
Well, I seem to differ with you, Bill. We have a lot of people moving into these areas, into these new subdivisions that are Democrats, and we really need to be careful.
We do, but 67.09%, that is a wide margin. They're going to have to bust in a lot of illegals to Milford to make up that difference.
Yeah, but we mustn't sit comfortable. We need to be hard at working, and we need to keep pushing forward.
Okay.
By the time we realize, the Democrats will be in front of us again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I have to say, to be honest, it's a rounding error difference between the 3 elections. So it does not show some massive decay over the last from 2016 to 2024 in the turnout for Trump, right? So it's kept. I did a comparison though. I pulled up Brown County. They had 74.04 in 2016, 77.96 in 2020, and 80.13 in 2024. So Brown County is obviously smaller, more rural, doesn't have the same kind of demographic, but they're, thank God for these smaller counties that took their Trump numbers to over 80%. That's a pretty impressive result. Any other comments, guys?
Nope.
I put up, this is the overall map. I got this from, it's called Decision Desk because they've already called Nevada. So any comments on the overall result nationally?
I was surprised Wisconsin and Michigan swung properly. Pennsylvania, we knew was going to be a toss-up. I wasn't surprised about Georgia, but I honestly was shocked that Michigan turned red. And I think that sounds loudly. And I also believe the independents had a larger voice in this election, the people that are not registered Republican or Democrat, that those that are sitting on the fence, they looked at Kamala and just, she's a terrible candidate. I think that, and I've said this from day one to people, if you can't vote for Trump and you leave that the whole line blank, I understand your concerns or your issues, but to say I can't vote for Trump but I can vote for Kamala, I can't understand that unless you're just a diehard liberal Democrat. So independents saying I can vote for Kamala but not Trump, I just couldn't understand it, because for every one thing they had issues with Trump, I had 10 things with Kamala's history, and plus the last 4 years of this country, the way it's been ran.
So nationally, if I look at Trump's success, I was thinking about this and I thought a lot of his success, really almost none of his success. I mean, obviously it's the base, you need that base. But I even asked my wife today, I'm like, who is the person, the traditional Republican that is essential to Donald Trump? And it's hard to come up with that name. And so, but you look at the team around him, Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, RFK Jr. So if you look at Trump's success, if you really look at it, what put him over the top is his collaboration with these, what I call non-traditional grassroots, most of them coming from being Democrats background, but that have checked out on the crazy train and come over to the light. I'll ask you guys this, ask you a question. Do you feel like in Clermont County, the success of Trump is coming from the party establishment or from more of this grassroots type stuff that happens around Trump?
I think that all those yard signs saying Republicans for Harris, I think there were a lot of signs that should have been put up that said Democrats for Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess that didn't address the question I asked.
But I think it was more of the part. A lot of it was grassroots and a mixture. I mean, I don't think you can really say.
You're bringing up the Starlight Drive-In. I would call that grassroots, not.
That was pure grassroots.
Okay, my car cruise-ins.
Right. I think people already knew whether they were voting. The people that were registered Republicans that are Trump supporter, non-Mitt Romney Republicans, I think they voted for Trump because I know several Republicans who are like, yeah, I really don't like the fact that I have to vote for Trump, but I'm voting for him because of policies and he's Republican. So I think it was a mixture in this election, but I do think the independents had the large voice in some of these swing states.
Well, so I still think the party establishment, I heard some pundits saying, I thought it was a good point. What actually happened is a rebuke to both parties' establishments. The Democrat establishment couldn't force somebody, and the Republican establishment has essentially lost control. Like they can no longer control. It's Trump's deal now. and he's not afraid to engage these people that are non-traditional, like a Tulsi Gabbard, to be a keeper, or RFK Jr. That would never have happened under, Mitt Romney or George Bush or Dick Cheney. These is a different kind of world we're in now.
Trump has always been an outcasted candidate. He's not really been a Republican Party candidate. Back in 2016, they opposed him heavily until they realized, oh, wow, like look at Paul Ryan. He was pretty anti-Trump until he realized, oh, Trump's going to win this thing. Oh, I'm now on the Trump train. And, most of those Republicans that opposed Trump jumped on the train. And I feel like the same thing kind of happened, not to the extent that it did the first time, but I think the party kind of left Trump behind in the beginning and then switched. And of course, then the National Party, there was a big shift with the leadership over the National Party during his campaign.
Do you guys feel with Trump winning, do you feel like, I could say how I feel, but would you describe your feeling as euphoria, or, it's just more hard works down the road?
Oh, no, just, at peace, and the anxiety is kind of lifted up a little bit. But obviously, we still have a lot of hard work ahead of us, especially the next 2 months, because who knows what they're going to come up with.
For me, it's Republicans now own the House, the Senate, the White House, and a majority of mindset in the judicial branch in the Supreme Court. There are no excuses over the next 2 years,
right,
that they have. If America doesn't succeed over the next 2 years, maybe the first year is going to be rough because we're fixing everything. But if by year 2, at the end of year 2, we haven't seen the promises that have come from Republicans, there's nothing standing in their way. And I hope that the division that we consistently see with the Republican Party, where we fight amongst ourselves and we stay divided on some nonsense stuff, that they don't just sit and bicker and fight. Because if that happens, that's disappointing. If we throw away the opportunity to fix America, we have every opportunity right now to fix the Department of Justice, immigration, all of it. We have complete, carte blanche to do this. If we just let that go away, I don't know if I can be consider myself part of the
Well,
party.
I don't know that, I don't know that the things I think Republicans talk about actual ideals and Democrats don't that much lately. But things like what should happen with the Ukraine war, the never-ending war, you have a significant amount of the Republicans in Congress that are uniparty with the Democrats on their forever wars, right? And so I think there's going to be some hard things, even in the Senate with a strong majority. You're still going to have what's her face, the one from Maine or whatever, Collins, and you have a couple of these rhinos. This is going to be a real test of whether to keep party discipline in the rhino class.
Trump made
versus a rhino agenda.
Trump made two very definitive statements, and I really think he overstepped. He said, I'll end the conflict in Israel and I'll end the conflict in Ukraine. And I believe, don't quote me on this, I'd have to look it up, but I think he said before he even takes office.
Right.
So that is a tall order that he took, and a tall task. And a lot of Americans that voted for him aren't going to forget that he said those words. I think he took a big, big risk saying that. Maybe end it once he takes office, but he just really threw down on that. So the expectation, he set the bar very high.
I think that's very Reagan-esque, because that's what happened with the Iran hostages. Remember, they released them on the inauguration day.
I remember. Yeah.
And I think that, Ukraine is a better example. Zelensky's going to have to come to the table, right? And we're going to have to, because Trump is not going to support. And I actually think a lot of the European countries, the populace is moving in the position of, we got to solve this thing. It just can't be another Afghanistan. But anyway, let's keep rolling here on these, and we're going to try to hit them quick. So Bill's going to talk mostly about this one, but this is U.S. Senate Bernie Moreno, a fantastic flip. Bernie had 62.39% of the vote. What I did on a lot of these is I put a comparison. So when Jim Renacci ran against Sherrod Brown, he actually had a higher percentage of the vote in Clermont County, 65.04, but it was a much lower turnout election because it was not a presidential at the same time. So Bill, you work with Bernie Moreno. You know him inside and out. What's your comments on Bernie Moreno in Clermont County, specifically with Bernie?
So I believe that Bernie had a huge heart for Clermont County for a lot of reasons. One, the first time around we endorsed him, and then he had to jump. And I will say this: when Bernie had to pull out of the race last time, he had called me. He did not take that lightly. He also had some serious cash invested early on of his own money, and he walked away from it because Trump had this plan. What's crazy about Trump's vision, you can talk all you want about how horrible Trump is. I don't care if you're left, right, center. Trump had a vision, and that vision came true, this roadmap, and it came through Ohio. He knew J.D. Vance was going to get the Senate. I also think Trump had visioned J.D. Vance to be the vice president way before anybody really knew. I really do believe that, because when Trump called Bernie in and said, hey, you need to drop out of the race, I'm going to end up backing J.D. Vance, that's whole plan unfolded. And then I'll back you when you run. And there were a lot of people and that questioned whether Bernie Moreno was going to get Trump's endorsement. Early on, the campaign, all we heard was, well, Trump hasn't endorsed you yet. You guys said you were getting the Trump endorsement, but Bernie knew that it was coming, and he just sat back. He didn't take a negative stance. He just waited and waited and waited, and Trump came through. Then now we pulled J.D. Vance so that DeWine gets to put some rhino in for Senate, which I'm very disappointed on.
We'll see who it is.
Right, but I suspect Dolan's going to get that. You just watch. Anyways, as far as Bernie goes, this whole thing has been planned for years, and Trump knew what the plan was. The plan executed exactly the way Trump visioned it, and Bernie was a part. He came out. He worked really hard. He was on the road constantly. He and his wife.
So why do you think that? Clearly Bernie Moreno is a better candidate than Jim Renacci. Would you agree with that?
Oh yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. So why would you think Jim Renacci would actually have a higher percentage in Clermont County in 2018 versus Bernie Moreno in 2024?
So I was looking at that. There's kind of a hidden, subtle, sabotaging undertone in the GOP about Bernie. I don't know why. Bernie has been great to Clermont. He kicked his campaign off here. We did videos here. He's talked Clermont up. But Jeff Corcoran, Rick Grant, some Joe Eaker, I have a picture of him signing Bernie's bus when he wouldn't even give Bernie applause during the Senate debate up in Oxford. And Bernie was the endorsed candidate at that time, mind you. Jeff Corcoran pitching the wrong time and all that. I just think that the GOP did a very poor job the Central Committee did not do the right job. I mean, there were signs sitting in Central Committee that Luiza and we had to go down and pick up the remainder of signs because we were told they were being put out, but they didn't. But kudos to people like Jeannie Zermely and Adam Bird and some others. I know, Josh, even though he didn't get all the signs out, he did do a lot of door knocking. I got to give him credit for that. There were people that worked hard for Bernie, but there were a lot of people with smiles. I'll give you an example. Mike Logue, always in a picture with Bernie and big supporter of Bernie, but doesn't help, doesn't set up events, doesn't come. Mike Logue didn't help me with one thing. The only thing he did do is came up and I asked him to pray over or do the pledge over an event early on. I think it was the Kerry Lake event, if I remember correctly. But we have people that could have stepped up. We could have made that margin even greater had we promoted Bernie the way that Bernie.
Well, or just properly leverage the times he was here. Don't tell people the meeting's at 2 when it's at 3:30.
Right. I mean, nobody.
Wrong times. Don't do
that. Room for a Senate candidate coming. That room was very empty that day, and it's because people got confused on the times. And
all right, Luiza, you have anything to say about Bernie before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't think that from Clermont County had a lot of support. Let's not forget about David Taylor that arrived the last 10 minutes just to say hi to him and get a picture, and that was it. I just don't get it. I don't understand. But I can testify to the conversation that Bill stated about Bernie the first time round when we endorsed him. I, too, had a conversation with him about 2 days later when he stepped out. And he told me exactly that Donald Trump had a vision for him and Vance. And I do truly believe that Donald Trump laid it out where JD Vance was going to be vice president and then Bernie Senate. So I think you're right, Bill. Donald Trump is a strategic man, and I think he had this already laid out. Bernie was a perfect candidate. I mean, Bernie knew there were bigger things coming for him, and he needed to do what Trump wanted him to do.
So let's go
one
on.
last thing. One last thing on Bernie. I'll make it quick. His speech last night talks about his character. He made it very clear that a lot of people in Ohio did not vote for him, but his job over the next 6 years is to win as many of those folks over as he can, because he works for all of Ohio. That was the message in his speech last night.
Yeah.
And I have a heightened respect for that. We don't see that a lot with a lot of candidates.
I liked it that he referred it to the red, white, and blue. He's representing the red, white, and blue.
Correct.
And I really like that statement.
All right, we got to move on just for time here. Okay. So issue 1 is the next thing up. If I click the right thing here. So here's issue 1. So I'm actually surprised that issue 1 got clobbered so bad statewide. I thought I was had the feeling in my gut of another disaster coming, but it worked out great. So Luiza, you wanted to hit on issue 1. So what, Luiza, hold on, I'm going to keep the numbers up here. So this is just Clermont County numbers. So issue 1 did better than Bernie for getting beat by a little higher percentage than Bernie. So
I think we Republicans did a really good job about getting the message out there about what issue 1 was, about the gerrymandering, because there was so many campaigning on TV commercials about issue 1 that was so confusing. I mean, I watched some of them, and sometimes I was like, man, maybe I need to vote yes on issue 1. The worst part of it all was when down here at Milford High School, they had kids outside with signs actually saying that if they didn't vote for issue 1, that they were going to lose their buses and that it was going to affect their schools.
They had signs about issue 1 or the income tax.
No, issue 1. Issue 1. And actually, David Kale, one of our Central Committee members, texted me just a little bit ago. It says vote yes. And it says, hold on, that is the income tax thing. But we had a girl up here at Loveland yesterday, and she was saying, vote yes on issue 1, vote yes on issue 1 the day before. Sorry. But I think we Republicans did a really good job about educating the people about issue 1. Even though, again, I was like you, Chris, I didn't think we were going to win this, because I felt like when it comes to issues, we are always lost to the game. And I really didn't think we were going to win this, but we won. We won great. I'm happy. I'm really happy.
So, Bill, what do you have to say about issue 1?
I have to give Adam Byrd complete props. Adam worked his tail off. I would say out of all the reps in the state, Adam worked the hardest. Adam was a huge in your face about issue 1. He worked the lines at the day at the BOE. He went around different areas of the state. He drafted material, and you look at the spend on issue 1. I don't have the exact numbers, but it was, let's just say, roughly 40 million, give or take 5 or 6 million. 40 million spent to get huge amounts of money for it to be yes, versus our, I think, 4 million spend on the no side. It's just massive defeat with all that money thrown in the toilet. And I think it sent the message to the Democrats very loud and clear that you want to keep putting these constitutional ballot change issues on the states. The voters have caught wind of it, and they're not going to just blindly vote ignorant.
Okay, so let's go on to, I'm going to throw up here, we're going to rapid fire a few of these. So this is David Taylor, but only in Clermont County. David Taylor only in Clermont County. So you see David Taylor got 69%. Brad Winstrup, the last time he was up, got 71%. So a little bit of reduction there, a little bit of increase that for the Democrat on a percentage basis. And then if you look at the undervoting here, the undervoting is about 4 times the amount that took place in the last Winstrup race. but Winstrip would be, pretty well-known commodity at the time he was running in 2022 versus David Taylor is a new name on a ballot for a lot of people that might be voting in a general election. But that's the race for David Taylor. And there's a few of these guys. If you want to jump in with anything, otherwise I'm just going to kind of speed through them.
So, I think David Taylor is nothing really with that. I do think David Taylor, what's funny is I heard from Bernie today, but I didn't hear from David Taylor. That's it's interesting. I called David Taylor to congratulate him. Didn't hear back from him.
Well, hold on a second. He hasn't showed up for Central Committee meetings. You think he's going to show up for anyone else?
I have faith that David does the right thing in Congress because we don't have a choice. He's now serving Congress.
Well,
we have no choice but to have faith in him as our congressional candidate.
We should have I bring this up, and since you said it, I'm going to you triggered me to say this, Bill, by saying that. I hope it's going to turn out as our district is the most red district in the entire state now. It wasn't when Winstrip was in there because Winstrip had part of Hamilton County, and we should have a Thomas Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene type fighter in that district. And I don't know if David Taylor can do that. I hope he will do that because when you look at it, it's an easy district for a Republican to win without spending a shitload of money, if you follow what I'm saying, because when you take it Clermont out the way the district is now, I think on the overall district basis, he got like 75% or something like that across the whole district because it's such a red district. Because unlike Winstrip, it doesn't include part of Hamilton County. Frankly, Winstrip's district moved away from him, if you follow what I'm saying.
Because I mean, David Taylor's not going to be doing any worse than Brad. Brad just got quiet. I mean, what is Brad?
David Taylor will do much better because Brad had up until the 2022 was different, but before that, remember, part of Hamilton County was Brad's district, and it was actually a tougher district because of that. Now it's a much easier district.
I just think a lot of times, if you think about just as an overall general statement, when politicians are running for office, you get callbacks all the time. Like, I mean, you think about it. As Central Committee members, during endorsement time, you can call anybody and they will call you back right away because they want your endorsement. Because if you get the Clermont County endorsement, you have a good shot at winning the election. Highly probable. But once they're in office, they seem to just tread off and disappear. You're no longer as important. I think it showed very, very high class. I mean, Bernie had, I'm sure, thousands of messages and calls. I'm just some nobody in Clermont County who took the time out of his day to call and thank me for the support and to thank me for congratulating him. So these politicians could come up with every excuse they want. I was busy, but
I'll be honest with you. I don't put a lot on that, this personal thing, like they called me or not, because
I know you don't. This is where we differ.
But I mean, it could send out a note or something, but that's hopefully David Taylor was doing more important stuff today. Hopefully he was doing more important stuff today. But to your point, I would agree that these politician types should be sending out notes from their campaign, at least, right? To the Central Committee saying, thank you guys. That would be something I think they should focus on, of having actually a communication process.
What do you think?
Whereas I don't have that personal thing where I worry about, but you made me think about it, Bill, by talking about it, as you would think all these politicians would have a way to at least communicate back to their supporters in areas their thank you and appreciation. But let's keep rolling. What you going to say, Luiza?
What do you think David Taylor's doing today?
I don't know. Hopefully he's talking to Thomas Massey about how to be a kick-ass Republican Freedom Caucus member. Okay. If you found out that David Taylor was fighting like hell to be a Freedom Caucus member all day today, you'd be okay with him not calling you back. Okay? But if he was taking the day off sleeping in,
he won't call.
then okay, let's look at some of these other ones real quick, because I just want to keep us moving here. If I go to the right, okay, here we go. So this is Terry Johnson, only Clermont County. And so he got 69.45%, 70.71% last time. The undervotes went up about 1,000 on this. This one is very steady from race to race, and the vote totals and this was 2020 to 2024 because it's a 4-year term. Okay. So I'm just going to keep rolling through these. So now some of the opposed candidates, Jean Schmidt, she did a little bit worse on the percent, 63 to 64, rounding error type stuff. The Dem opponent went up a little bit. The undervotes went up about 3 times, but the vote total, the total of contest was more votes because of the presidential year. So it was it's almost 70,000 versus 50,000. Now this one, the rep races are not as dramatic because they're not the full county. They're just part of the county. But I think there's gonna be a little bit of pattern here on this. You guys want to say anything about Jean Schmidt's race?
No.
Okay. No. All right. So Adam Byrd, this is only as Clermont County part of his race. So 73.69%. By the way, I fully support Adam Byrd getting a higher percentage than Jean Schmidt would ever get because he's a much better rep than Jean Schmidt will ever be.
So Chris, pause a second. So there's a question. So Robin, an undervote is basically where you on your ballot, when you don't circle anyone in that race, that person that counts as an undervote. So that means that many people that voted on a ballot did not circle Jean Schmidt's name. They skipped it.
Okay. So so this is Adam Byrd. You guys want to say some stuff about Adam Byrd? You already complimented him on his work on issue 1.
Adam Byrd is fantastic.
Yep.
So, okay. So let's keep rolling here so these are the unopposed races. And I think there's a little bit of a pattern here. Okay. And see it. I'm going to tell you what the pattern is. So I'm just saying rhetorically see if you can see the pattern. So I feel like in all the unopposed races, the Republican candidates in a race that basically had almost the same number of votes, it was like 111 to 113. They all dropped like an average of about 4,000 votes. So look at Tucolvy, 2020, 85,000, 2024, 80,000. And the undervotes, 33,000 in 2024, 26,000 in 2020. So the undervoting, it's not like some major thing, but it went up on all of them. So you see what I'm saying is that they drop votes where people aren't voting. So they're leaving their ballot blank for some of these things. I know, Luiza, you probably wouldn't have an argument with leaving your ballot blank for Mark Tucolvy. But you guys got anything you want to say about? Well, let me run through the unopposed ones, and then if you guys have something to say about them in aggregate,
we can knock Mark Tucolvy out in 2 seconds. Hey, Mark, secret. I didn't vote for you. I left it blank. Sorry, man.
So
that's all I got to say.
But remember, Mark, I rated you highest when we reviewed the elected officials. Yes. I rated
Hicks
you higher
likes, hey, Mark, Hicks likes you the best out of the three of us.
Yeah, and Mark, I didn't influence Bill Thomas.
Okay, and I didn't produce a slate card that said not to vote for you. Okay, so Zermerly, see the same thing here, 85 to 81. Undervotes 25 to 31. Okay?
I was actually disappointed. Again, I know you don't care much for Jeannie. We polar opposites here. I like Jeannie a lot. I think she does a great job. I cannot believe she had that many undervotes. So,
well, it's very common. It's not atypical. She had 25,000 before. My point was just that you basically had 4,000 or 5,000 votes moved from the candidate to the undervotes in these unopposed races. Here is Jeremy Evans, 85 to 83. His is one of the smallest ones, but it's the engineer, from 26 to 30,000 undervotes. Okay. And for sheriff, okay, so 80 Leahy got 86,000 votes in 2020. Stratton got 80,000 this time. And there's like a couple thousand more votes in 2024 than in 2020. Both presidential election years. The undervotes went from 24 to 33. So like an 8,000 increase in undervotes.
That's a lot.
So this is, you ever hear that slogan that says you go bankrupt slowly and then all of a sudden? And so I would be like, all these things like this undervote number would be something that if the party was intelligent, they would evaluate what's happening with undervotes. Why are we getting all those people not checking the box, if you get what I'm saying, in there? And especially when they're increasing subtly over time. Because, frankly, would you guys agree? Well, I don't know that the Democrats have a platform to run on right now. But beyond that, they put up basically, these are unopposed, but when they do put up candidates, they're not the brightest and brightest. But here's, let's go into the opposed races. Let me go back there. Do you guys have anything you want to say about Stratton's race?
Oh,
No. Chris, there's a question. Why don't we like Mark? I think we should pause and address that because.
Well, I think we've addressed that like on 5 different calls. So
yeah, but this may be somebody new to the call. I think you take a minute and we just do a quick 1 minute. What are issues with Mark? And Cody, just to make it very fast, I actually was really close to Mark. I thought a lot of Mark, actually worked on his campaign the first time, and working through the courts with some families, watching them get hosed under Mark being prosecutor. I personally witnessed this and some of the underhanded stuff that's gone on. This isn't conjectures, things that I personally witnessed that has turned me sour on Mark. Mark uses his biased judgment. He's an elected official. There should be no bias in the way you run your office, but he runs his office based on how he likes you. And that's wrong. You're an elected official. Whether you like somebody or not shouldn't matter. So that's my take on it.
Can I add? I've had Cody personal experience to what Bill Thomas has witnessed. And unfortunately, I have lost total faith in Mark DeColvey. And I think for the next time round in 2028, we need to find a candidate to take out Mark DeColvey.
Yeah.
So I would just say this to Cody also is go check. We did a whole episode on rating the politicians, and Mark DeColvey is one of them. So you can get familiar. I think the best thing if we bring up somebody you're not familiar with them is we did a thing where we rated all of the non-legislative delegation office holders. And so you can go watch that and you'll learn a lot more about why people on this bill, Luiza and I, all don't like Mark DeColvey. Although I just want, when they come to lock me up, I just want Mark to remember that I gave him the highest rating of anybody. And I never went to anybody's house to take a picture. So that's the other thing. And Cody, if you don't understand that, you got to go back and watch some of our other podcasts to understand why that's important. Okay, so let's get into the opposed one. So Bachelor, so you can see a pattern here. And then I did some analysis because of Jeff's note, okay, that I'll get to in a second here. But so Bachelor had 71% last time, 68% this time. Undervotes went up by a little more than 1,000 on Bachelor. And then Painter, similar type of thing. He was unopposed last time, so his undervotes. This will give you a good example, Bill, if people just vote undervote when somebody's not opposed. So you had 20,000 more in 2020 than this time, but 68%. So I actually did the analysis because Mark, the funny part about it is people on here might not understand this, but I had a Reform the Clermont GOP PAC slate card that was an undervote on, saying to undervote on Bachelor and Painter and Schmidt and Freeman for various reasons. And if you want to know those reasons, you can go watch the prior podcast or look at my Facebook page. But the cards were never really produced, okay? So they never really, there was not, I emailed out the cards to like 1,300 people. And I probably gave out about 50 of them. I gave them out at the event. I never gave them out any at the polling location or anything like that. And then I went and did the math because Jeff Corcoran sent out a note saying Hicks's card had no impact, which the funny part is, part of that is because it never even really existed. Okay. So it was just a figment of social media. But I did go and do an analysis on this. And because he brought up that there's another race. Let's see if it's the next one here. Here's Freeman, by the way. Freeman was opposed, and let me hold on. I didn't show it here. So Freeman was opposed. He has 68.43. Last time around, Barb Wiedenbein had 73%. The undervotes here went up by about 1,000. It's very similar. It's a little more votes in 2024 than 2020, but not a big statistical difference in there. And then Rudd was opposed, and he was not part of anything I said about undervoting. And you see his results. So Deborah Klepper was not opposed in 2020. She got 85,000 votes. There were 26,000 undervotes. And then Rudd in 2024 had 73,000 votes, and there were 6,000 undervotes. Well, I went and did analysis, and suffice it to say, when I looked at it, when you look at the candidates, these candidates and these are just facts. I don't know whether these are good or bad or right or wrong or different. If you look at them and you do the math on these people, because Jeff brought up the comparison of the recorder office to these, saying the card had no impact. And I don't think the card really had any impact. The card had the impact intended, is that they said they were going to put the shelter out to bid, the animal shelter. Okay. But when you actually run the math on all of them, it looks like it had about 0.5% impact, which would be about 568 votes. If you compare all the other races to the county recorder race that was not part of this. So all I could say is, all right, I emailed about 1,300 people, had 568 vote impact. That's what it is. Okay. And I think a lot of people are confused. Somebody told me they're confused when somebody says undervote, which we got when Robin was asking what was undervote. And I'll put that back up, what it even means. But it just means you leave it blank on there. But that's kind of all those races. So across all of them, and let me put it back up here, is you've got, I'm going to go back, Bachelor, Painter, Freeman, Rudd. In each one of these, you got a little bit more with Rudd, and that's the 568, the 0.5% difference. But all of them, you have this slightly lower percentage. I'll go to ones that was opposed. Slightly lower percentage, like Freeman to Wiedenbein. Slightly more, about 1,000 more undervotes on all these kind of opposed races. Although there's one in here that was not opposed the last time around. Okay, so that's kind of a summary across all those. Now, on any of those races, guys, Bill and Luiza, do you have anything on any of them that you want to say or talk about any of the races? So, Bachelor, Painter, Freeman, Rudd.
You know what? Tim Rudd didn't spend any money on his campaign. So I think that becoming county recorder must be a really easy race to run.
Yeah,
that's how I feel.
He beat the endorsed candidate in the primary, and he didn't really do anything. I think he was sitting there. I don't swear to this, but my thought here is based on what I heard. Tim was just kind of at home the night of the election, and somebody called him and said, "Hey, Tim, you won." He goes, "Oh, did I?"
Yeah.
I don't think he was really.
We only run by, it was an automatic recount. It was a very small amount of votes he won by. But
he didn't really. He threw his name in the hat because Fraley had went against him so many times and undermined him and backbit him, because of something that happened years and years ago that he didn't bow to the altar of Fraley, and ever since then, she's been on Tim and causing him problems. And then he ran against her, so that was made her even more mad. So it was interesting that he just, it's like, I'm not even going to really put much effort on. I'll throw my name in there. If people want me, great. If not,
I'll put more effort in the general election. I saw Rudd signs in places. So.
I saw a handful, yeah.
So that's the thing that people don't realize, that maybe they've never been involved with this stuff, is there's things where it's extremely hard. Like if you're trying to knock off Gene Schmidt, because the way the system works, it's very hard. Okay. There's other things where people just get into office like they're unopposed. It's like they've never run a hard race. Like Mark Takalby has never had an opponent in a primary or in a general election.
I think recorder is a good job for Tim. Based on
the thing that's shocking is that Tim blesses us with these things when we know he was the best person for both clerk of courts and auditor and recorder. Just whatever job's available, Tim is the best available Republican in Clermont County.
I think he'll be fine with recorder. I don't think Alan Freeman is going to do well as the clerk. Alan was not qualified to do clerk of courts. He can be mad all he wants.
Alan probably won't come to work, so that'll make it. Can't screw it up as much.
If you can't be honest with people on the central committee, how are you going to be honest with your job?
So does the clerk of courts have to show up every day, or is it like the commissioners where they only have to show up once a month?
Once a month. It's actually once every 90 days, except for like treasurer and an auditor have to show up once a month.
When I hear that, I'm just like, once every 90 days. The bar is just so low.
And if people don't know, there's jobs like township trustees. Those are meant to be part-time oversight jobs in most places. But these jobs are paid essentially full-time salaries, and they should be full-time jobs. Like your county elected officials are basically full-time job type pay, whereas a township trustee is basically getting paid like a part-time job for being oversight.
And it's your taxpayers' money. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
One time, one of the people said, this is opposite of the way Elon Musk would think, but one of the elected officials, I can't even remember which one, but said about coming to work, and their comment was, well, if your office is running smooth, why is it an issue if you don't come to work?
Well, that sounds like a liberal statement.
Well, and my answer was, well, if that's the case, then you should get rid of one of the people and take one of the jobs in your office and work there at the counter every day. But on the other hand, maybe your job is to think of innovations that could make your job more efficient for your constituents, like that it's easier to do things. I can get in and out better. So, any event, so that's anything. We talked about Freeman a little bit. That's in these other ones. So I did put one in here. If we want to hit, I'll pull this up real quick here. I only put one of the judges. I put Haddad because they're very similar. So they're always tend to be unopposed. So here's Haddad in 2018 versus 24. Must be a 6-year term. And so there were what I did this in 2018. The numbers were different because of the election years and the cycles and so forth. So that was an off-year election in 2018. So it's a lower turnout, but there was a 31% undervote that time, and there was a 39% undervote this time. And that was consistent on the judge-type offices. So I don't know if it means that much. If I was in charge, I'd be like, we don't want people to undervote. We want them to like our candidates, and we want to get behind that.
That was partially your fault.
Not. It might be my fault for pointing out that our courts stink, but I never told anybody to undervote Victor Haddad's race.
You didn't have to.
That just happened natural. So so that's the thing. And by the way, these undervotes, thinking of 39% undervote, is I think probably a lot of those people are conservatives, and they did it in 2018 also. And I think people do it because, frankly, even though we want conservatives and constitutional judges to win, people are not fans of races with no competition. Like, part of the thing is you're supposed to have competition, right? And so they just don't vote. And I do that on a lot of offices. If they don't have competition, I just don't vote on it because I'd prefer to see competition in our electoral system, even if
it's just like any job, right? I mean, they post it on Indeed, and you're lucky if you got in a first interview. So it should be the same thing.
Well, somebody told me once, when we have competition, we are always encouraged to do our personal best. When we have no competition, we're never encouraged to do our personal best. And that goes for everything. So even if it's a libtard running against somebody, I don't necessarily want them to win or anything, but I think competition is good, especially I think, for example, Mark DeCalvey not having competition makes him a weaker prosecutor because he's never had to answer questions during the campaign about how he would operate as a prosecutor. You get asked, on the campaign trail or in forums if you do them, and it makes you more knowledgeable. Okay. So I think I got the Milford tax in here. I think the last one in here, but I wanted to put up the State Board of Education.
No, that's not the last one. You have Hava as the last one.
I think you got my charts are in this order. So the next one is the State Board of Education. The Milford one was the last chart I have. If we want to do them out of that order, we can. You want to talk about the Milford?
That's not first? Well, no. I just want to make sure we have two things to talk about.
Yeah,
Luiza, you can handle
the
this.
The last one is the Milford tax. The second to last one is this, the State Board of Education. So let me just rattle the numbers off here. So in 2020, Brendan Shea ran against Mary Vinegar, and he got 56% of the vote in Clermont County. This is a great, big, huge district where nobody could really, it's almost no pay. So it's these, by the way, these are designed for union people to win because one male or something like that will win and the unions will will pay for somebody, because there's no way they get, it's like 17 counties, it's like some ridiculous number of counties. But Brennan Shea got 56%. Mary Vinegar got 43.93, and this actually caused him to win overall in his whole district, because had he not had this margin in Clermont County, he would not have won. And you see, there's 22,000 undervotes there. This time around, Mary Vinegar got 61, almost 62% of the votes, and Hava Loudon got 38.32 or 33. And before we say anything else, just this is the only race that involves humans on the ballot that does not have a party affiliation next to it. This was the only race on the ballot that did not have party affiliation next to the names. Okay,
Hence why we got destroyed.
So, what I think, Luiza, you wanted to talk about this one. So,
yes, Mary Vinegar, I think, has got name recognition this time round. I mean, people remember her name back then. They saw it again this time round. And Hava Loudon, I mean, her name is not very common. It's very unusual. Hava Loudon also joined the race right, I think, at the end of July, because it's my understanding that if you get endorsed from Clermont County, that this is a very difficult race to lose if you get endorsement from Clermont County. So we were kind of chatting before the podcast, and, you know, we came up to the conclusion that it was possibly her entering into the race late in the game. I believe that they're able to register for this back in January, February, I think it is, where other candidates can only register later. But Hava jumped in because there were Democrats running and there was no Republicans running against them. And so she jumped in at the last minute when she became aware that Brandon Shea wasn't running, because he was going to be running for commissioner. So I think her jumping in last minute, I think name recognition from Mary Vinegar, I think that's what gave Mary the win.
I think, Bill, you had anything to say about this one?
I think this race shows the deficiencies in the Central Committee. I think that they failed this candidate. They didn't. They put her through the ringer trying to get her endorsed. I was very disappointed in how all that went down with the Central Committee and this candidate. And I think we saw it in the polls with the numbers.
Do you think that the slate card handout, you know, I can say what happens at the precinct, at the voting location I stay at all day, which is Union Township Civic Center. You know, this race will be highly dependent upon the slate card, right? Because people, maybe they have some, what do you call that? Like deep memory of a name Vinegar or something. But I think this would be a race where if I walked in there and I didn't have anything, I looked at this, I'd be like, who the hell are these people? You know, and if they don't have an R or a D, then I don't really know what it is. Do you think that the slate card passing out operation in the Clermont GOP is weaker than it used to be?
Oh, massively weaker. Not even in the same ballpark.
Well, when we were passing out the trifold for information on the candidates that were running, they left, the GOP left Hava Loudon's name out, plus another two candidates. Melina Siebert was left out and Terry Johnson was left out. People coming into the Central Committee to get signs, they get that literature and they sit and they read it. You know, some of them obviously do their homework before they go to the polls. So that was a big problem. So, yeah, I agree. The GOP definitely dropped the ball on Hava. They did not support her. She didn't have enough support. But, hey, it was the same thing with Tim Rudd and what was her name? Where she lost she was the endorsed candidate and she lost. That's because the GOP does not support these candidates.
Well, I would take big exception because that was a primary. Okay,
yeah,
I'm of the mind that the party primary should be where the party sorts out who's going to run in the general election. So right. I don't like the characterization when David Ubel described it as, we lost the recorder race. Okay. in the primary. No, the voters chose a different person than who was endorsed by the committee to be the standard bearer for the Republicans. You know, it's different. A general is, so I don't mean to harp on it. So anything, you know, I feel like I try to tell like people at our polling location, I just don't think the enthusiasm's there. I think there's an enthusiasm gap because, and I think the enthusiasm gap is coming from a lack of the Central Committee getting treated with any respect. I'm kind of the guy against, you know, this is a general election, which is different than a primary, you know, but there's much more focus on handing out slate cards in the primary than there is in the general election. But the general election is where you're actually winning the prize or not, right? And so so I just feel like the enthusiasm's not there. You know, the polling location that I'm at, Bill, this might be interesting to you. You know, Civic Center, that's where Joe Dills is supposed to be. Never shows up. It's always Bob McGee, Neil Maurer, and me. You know, that's who you can count on. Andy Capel supposedly was someplace else, but I never saw him.
Is that where he's supposed to be now after he's moved?
Correct. Yeah. So there's supposed to be like 5 precincts, I think, vote there, and it's only the 3 of us that ever show up, and we are always there. You know, we would never leave it uncovered, but I think they've dumbed down the whole. Just so people know, there's a committee member for each precinct. Usually a voting location will have, you know, a few have 2, but most of them will have 3 to 5 to 6 precincts vote at one location. And so you'll have a committeeman for all of those. I think they've also dumbed down the coverage because in the olden days, you know, there were like 5 of us that covered the area that I vote at, the Civic Center, but it was at Crossroads. We always figured out who was going to cover it on our own. We didn't need anybody at headquarters to help us with this. Now, I feel like all this stuff about the spreadsheet, we had somebody show up saying they were assigned to come and cover our location. We're like, what are you here for? You're not supposed to be here. This is your location. And I think like Bob McGee, for example, Bill, I think he's actually offended by it, you know, because it's like, we're adults. We can cover. I don't need to go tell somebody I'm going to be at my polling location.
Well, and not only, you're the precinct member representative for the Central Committee. So wouldn't it make sense that you should be working your township?
Correct.
I mean,
and figure it out. My claim to fame used to be that I would
12 precinct members. Sorry. Goshen's got 12 precinct members, and it's always the same people that volunteer at Goshen High School. Always. You
was
never
Corcoran handing stuff out at Goshen High School?
I saw him once. I didn't see him.
Okay, so Corcoran's a great example. The leadership doesn't man their polling locations.
Yeah. Well, they dictate, but they don't do it.
So, and it's not that hard. And so I just feel like I know I'm off on a nit here, but I think that this race, and I'll pop it back up here, I don't know, but I think it could be emblematic of a failure to put slate cards in people's hands and remind them to vote for Hava Loudon. And I try to get us to all say, vote for Hava Loudon because that was the only thing on your ballot that didn't have an R or D next to it, you know, and so that's the one we really needed to emphasize, to vote for Hava Loudon and vote no on issue 1.
You know, Chris, I think that we need kind of a class to prepare people that are going to volunteer at these precincts, like what to expect, what you need to be saying, where you need to be standing, because obviously this year it became a big thing. You know, I had a volunteer that volunteered, and, you know, this was the first time. And we ran into a lot of complications because the guy's never done it before. And there wasn't anybody at that precinct, at that polling station, to guide him through it. So he didn't know what he was doing. So I think we should have a class that teaches people how to do.
Well, we're not the party, so Jeff can do that. But let's start with. Let's put up the last one here because we're running short on time. This is the earned income tax, Milford Exempted Village School District, that got destroyed 58% to 41%, or 42% in the libtard world of Milford Exempted Village Schools. Bill, I know you had a lot to do with this and worked a lot on this. So why don't you tell us some about, you know, why did you crush the dreams of the children?
I'm a horrible, horrible human being. I know. So we pushed back hard, and you know what's funny is they spent tens of thousands of dollars that they raised. I don't know what their total spend was because I haven't looked at the report. We spent nothing. We spent $0. And we had no support. Angie Barish did all the work for the most part. I mean, I did very little compared to her. And it was just really the two of us. We may have had some people call and, give us a little bit of advice here and there, but the heavy lifting was really just one person. One person took down a team of tons of people, tons of money. So this was truly the community pushing back on Milford and saying, no, we're not doing this because they don't believe the district has been fiscally conservative. So here's the answer. Milford's come out and said, we're going to reappropriate all the schools. So, for example, this elementary school is going to have grades 1 and 2. This elementary school is going to have 3 and 4. This one's going to have 5 and 6. What's funny is this is something I brought up years ago when Nancy House was superintendent on the CAT team. I brought this up as a solution, and the district said, there's no way we could do this. It would cost us too much money to do this. Now, all of a sudden, it's a feasible solution. But back in, I believe it was 17, 18, I brought this up. So now this is the go forward plan. And I think they're doing it because they know it's going to be a massive inconvenience to the parents to have to drive their kids across the township, across the school district to, let's say that you live in Upper Miami Township and your kid gets assigned to Pattison. You got to drive your kid 15 minutes down through traffic and everything else. Massive inconvenience.
Yeah, it's conditioning the parents. So next time they put this issue on the ballot again, the parent doesn't want to be inconvenienced, and he's been brainwashed.
Yeah.
I just want to point out that
this isn't saving anybody money. We already analyzed this years ago, and we were told by the district it would cost us more to do that.
They should fire the secretary. They would save a lot of money.
So I just want to point out the people that are there. I've been involved with school levies. Bill's been involved with school levies on the we don't like them side. And by and large, whenever there is an organized opposition, and Bill said one person, doing a lot of the work. If there's an organized opposition to a school levy, it will lose. And when I say organized opposition, somebody getting signs made, somebody doing this. Once they have an organized opposition, it's very hard for them to be successful with school levies. And you have to have good reasons why it's not a good idea to do it. And right now, this was an income tax levy, so different. But when it's a property tax, my theme is grandma can't pay any more property tax. She's tapped out. We got to come up with better ways. Okay, anything else on this one? I want to put up one thing just to close us out here before we do this, because somebody said when you said about the training class, Luiza. So this is okay. These are the new signs. I don't know if we've not talked about this. These are the new signs. So if you've been around Clermont County politics, you know that for years they had these. They would have flags on these orange cone things that were inadequately weighted at the bottom, so constantly the flags would be falling over. So you would be constantly picking up flags off the ground because the Board of Elections, and I must have told them a half a dozen times at meetings that you have to have weight in the bottoms of these things because they keep tipping over. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know.
The flag things. It's like how disrespectful. And then the people handing out literature would then, like, I would try to move the flags where they were up against something so they wouldn't keep falling over. But then I'm violating the rule because it's not on the line, because it's like so stupid. It's like, that's how government operates. These are their new signs. And you made me think of this, Luiza, because of you saying about a training program. So on both sides of the sign, it said no campaigning or distribution of literature beyond this point. So imagine if you stand on one side of the sign, this one is facing, the way it's looking here is out from the place. So the polling location is forward, ahead, to the left a little bit. But if you stood on the other side of it, it says no campaigning or distribution of literature beyond this point, which would make you think that you have to stay within 100 feet. You understand what I'm saying?
Unless there been a liberal that put that sign together.
On this side of the sign. This shows the stupidity of how government operates. Like, the sign should have been either different on each side. Jeff Corcoran could have helped them with that, right? Like having different slogans on each side.
Oh yeah.
Signs. So one side should have said, it should have said campaigning permitted outside this marker. The other one said no campaigning, inside this marker or something and be clear, but they didn't make any sense. So it's kind of like, as I ran about this and waste people's time, it's kind of like going from the little tiny Dora stickers. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you need to go check my my Facebook page on Dora, the drinking thing in Union Township, where they had these little tiny stickers where you couldn't see them. Now they have these great big white stickers, and all the buildings say no Dora here. But it's kind of like somebody came up with the great idea of have a sign, but the sign is actually confusing as hell. And a lot of times where the lines are, you guys know this, like you would know this at First Baptist Bill, when you were in Union Township, that there's not an obvious place to stick it in the ground, because a lot of these places are parking lots of asphalt. So who came up with the idea of a sign to stick in the ground when a lot of the voting location places, it's all parking lot? You follow what I'm saying? Like at First Baptist, where would you have put
You can.
Yeah, right. It's all parking lot. So I don't want to know who came up with these dumbass signs that are mislabeled. And this is what passes for efficiency in government. And I'm telling you, I'm jaded. Whether it's Republicans or Democrats, a shitload of your money gets wasted on stupid ass government shit. That doesn't make any sense.
Chris, do you know that Havel Loudon in Clark County got removed from a church because they said it was private property, and they've made a decision that they're not going to allow any campaigning?
Well, that's not legal, but okay.
That's what I thought.
So they signed an agreement. Although that happened a little bit to me at Jungle Gyms when they used to do the vote at Crossroads. There, I had some Trump signs, out on a car, like in somebody from Jungle Gyms was.
I remember. I remember that.
Which was all pissed off. It's like, this is a voting location. It's okay to have signs on voting day.
Yeah,
and
I don't know.
they were all hacked
here's
off.
the thing: if it's private property, then you shouldn't be allowed to have a voting location there.
Well, a lot of voting locations are private property because we don't want the government to build more buildings, Luiza. We want less government buildings.
Yeah,
but when the people sign up to be a voting location, they sign up to certain terms and conditions. So they must not understand those, or maybe in the county you're talking about, they don't have them correctly spelled out. But if your church is going to be a voting location, then there's certain rules that you have to follow that day. You're basically renting it to the Board of Elections for that day. And then they can do what the Board of Elections has control over it. So any event, we've gone on and on. Any closing big thoughts from you guys on the excitement? The three of us are probably tired, so we don't sound. Plus, Bill throws some rager party that goes to like 3 a.m. or something.
Yeah, we were heavy partiers last night.
But
my closing thought today was Safe Space Wednesday, and tomorrow is called Acceptance Thursday. So to all my liberals out there in Milford, please give my condolences, but prepare to accept.
Is this actual shit they do in Milford? You're serious that they have Safe Space Wednesday?
No, I'm just making this stuff up because they got to have. I'm not kidding. The stuff I've read today on social media it's been unbelievable. We're all bigots.
Did they give the kids a day off so they could emotionally recover from the defeat of the income tax?
Yes, they did. They said that the kids could take the day off today if they were recovering from the emotional upset of Trump winning.
So, Chris, are you in Dictator Richardson's Milford neighborhood group still? Because all of us are.
I never pay anything. If I am, I never pay any attention to it. So
if you go in there and read the post, literally the parents of some of these kids said, my kids came home crying after the election. My kids were home crying all day for the election. We're like, your kids are crying because an EIT failed. That means that you were putting your kids in a really bad position. That the kids shouldn't be concerned about the EIT or school operations.
But you're not. I didn't factor in that they're having three things happen. They're having Trump win, Bernie Moreno win, and the EIT get voted down.
Oh, it's a bad day.
It's a bad day.
And issue one. Don't forget that.
Maybe Jeff can grill some flapjacks here in Milford for them. We can have a Milford flapjack breakfast.
Flip flop.
Hey, by the way, I want to close. We're way past our time. I try to keep us to an hour and then fail. But I just want to personally, Jeff sent out some notes, and I noticed in the notes, I got an honorable mention in the notes that my slate card that never really existed didn't work. Okay. But which tells you just about living in somebody's head. And I had to remind them, if you guys know, send them back, that it did work. They put the shelter. They're putting the shelter up for bid. I guess, but I noticed that Jeff really doesn't thank anybody. You know, after a long, hard-fought election, he didn't thank any volunteers. The only people he thanked was Claire, his wife, and Denny Jansen for being the MC. The only people thanked by Jeff Corcoran in writing after a hard-fought election was his wife and Denny Jansen. And so I just want to take a minute here to also thank Claire Corcoran for all the work that she did during the election, and Denny Jansen. I remember as a small child, I'm glad to hear Denny's still kicking, you know, because I remember when I was a small child listening to Denny.
I don't even know who Danny Jensen is, but in closing, I would like to thank all the volunteers for all their hard work, all the volunteers that went out there and put signs up and, you know, showed up at car shows or any event possible and talked politics and taught people. You know, we always have the same people volunteering for the same thing all the time. And it's frustrating because when you have officials like Linda Fraley standing in front of a central committee and just beating us down about how we need to show up
to
support our candidates, but yet they don't show up. They don't even have the decency to put yard signs in front of their houses. It's absolutely pathetic. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank all the volunteers out there. I thank all the people that listened. And you know what? Republicans showed up. We really got together and we showed up. And I thank those people that decided to take a stand as Republicans, just like the guy with the mega hat at the Board of Elections in Batavia, and say, no, screw you, I'm not taking my hat off. Because from then onward, a lot of people started to do the same thing. So I thank those hardcore Republicans, and God bless America.
All right, you guys, we're going to quit on that note. Bill, you got anything?
Nope, just Claire, we're coming for that seat. So be ready.
All right, we'll put you out for bid.
This is not
the bid at the animal shelter.
This is not the face of a person laughing. I would suggest not running because
no. It's like Biden. We want her to run. She's got to run.
I would rather not.
I
I prefer not to tear people down and destroy their name.
The ego.
But yeah, I just would rather just them not run and not have to do
that.
But
remember, the only reason, before I kill the feed on us, the only reason Claire Corcoran is a commissioner is because of me. Because it was the election where David Ubel got kicked off the ballot because of me. And the only remaining candidates were Claire Corcoran and Tommy Bixler. And
well, you know what?
Bixler never chased ballots.
That sucks on you.
He would have won because he lost by a minuscule amount of votes and he didn't chase ballots. And that's why Claire Corcoran is our commissioner today.
Yeah, it sucks on you.
Thanked me one time for getting Ubel off the ballot.
Chris's fault.
You know what's your fault, and she's terrible.
It is my fault to some degree, but Ubel wasn't anything to shake a stick at either. So, all right, guys, thank you. Have a good night. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Good night. Bye.
And let's get ready for JD Vance in 2028, right? JD Vance.